All right. Interesting topic here for today is that Savvy Games was buying Scopely for $4.9 billion. Now, Savvy Games is a function of the Saudi Arabian government sovereign wealth fund, or otherwise known as the PIF. They were given $38 billion to go and buy and build a gaming division. And one of the things that they did with that $38 billion is they bought all of Scopely for $4.9 billion. So there is some controversy about this. We're going to talk about some of the details, and then we're going to also read an interview from one of the head guys over at Savvy Games that happened a year ago, which I think is very interesting. And then lastly, we're going to wrap it up on what it means to us, the players, because maybe it will have some impact, maybe it won't. But in general, you know, I asked my Twitch chat, which is not a super scientific poll at all, is this purchase a big deal to you? And, you know, loosely, people were saying no rather than yes. So let's get to the two articles that I want to read. The first was a press release, like this was all over Bloomberg earlier today, which is basically a statement of that the Savvy Games Group, a part of the Saudi Arabian government's public investment fund, has agreed to acquire the closely held publisher Scopely for $4.9 billion, the company said Wednesday in a statement. And I suspected something like that was going to happen because Scopely had acquired the game show networks from Sony. I don't know when, but this was not a cash offer. Sony took a chunk of ownership of Scopely in exchange of cash of the game show network. And I remember saying at the time, it's like, oh, Scopely's for sale, or Scopely wants to go public. And so they were for sale and they sold to basically this Savvy Group, which is a part of Saudi Arabia's PIF, the Public Investment Fund. So founded in 2011, Scopely publishes free-to-play games like Yahtzee with Bun Buddies, Stumble Guys, and Marvel Strike Force. Marvel Strike Force is probably one of their largest games in their portfolio. Some of the other games that we know about are Star Trek Fleet Command, WWE Champions, and there's the Looney Tunes game, which is very similar to Marvel Strike Force. Culver City, California-based company has raised money multiple times over the years from investors such as, and I don't know how to say that, it's often grown through acquisitions, including that of Foxnex, which is Marvel Strike Force, and the subdivision inside of Scopely is Boundless. Well, now it has been purchased by Savvy Games. Scopely is one of the fastest growing games companies today, and we have long admired their ability to build loyal, engaged player communities. Savvy Chief Executive Officer Brian Ward, and he is an industry person, and you know, Activision, and we're going to go over who he is, and then we're also going to go over an interview that happened about a year ago when the formation of this this company was. Ward added that he wants to accelerate that growth by continuing to invest in new products. In its first year, Savvy had made several splashy investments in gaming companies, including esport firms, ESL, and Facet. I'm not familiar with them. Part of the kingdom's overall $38 billion investment in video gaming. So my basic take of this is that Saudi Arabia is trying to diversify their holdings, just like I would on my like 401k. You know, I don't want to have just one stock, and Saudi Arabia doesn't want to have all of their holdings solely in oil. And so they want to get into non-correlated asset classes, and they are very interested in doing things like, I guess, football teams in the UK, which has been controversial also, and video games. So it's probably not a big deal, but someone in my chat pointed out is like, good note, this sale could have been the cause of short-term money grab focus for Scopely. They had to make the numbers high as possible for valuation purposes. And I think that was kind of an interesting take. And the other thing too is that this the Savvy Games also have investment stakes in EA, Activision, Blizzard, and Nintendo. And I think a lot of those are because those are publicly traded company and they own large chunks of the stock. And I don't know if they own like controlling interests enough to influence like the board members or whatnot. But it's interesting that they're trying to diversify and get into the video games. Now, Brian Ward, this is on his website, brianward1.com, where it's kind of a little bit of biography of him. And I just wanted to go over who he is because there's an interview, and then we're going to talk about what it means to the players. Brian Ward, founder, this might be old, founder and CEO of Lotto Interactive, an award-winning skill-based mobile games developer for commercial online wagering and government lottery platforms. Interesting. Throughout the US, UK, and Canada. The company was formed in 2013, first launched in 2016. I served as Senior Vice President for Worldwide Studios and Vice President, Studio Planning at Activision Blizzard from 2004 to 2012. Previously, I was Senior Studio roles at Microsoft Xbox, and he also worked from EA. So, and it looks like he has a law degree. Now, this is an interesting article. I want to read this because it tackles some of the issues that I am not really well versed into. Like, I don't know much about Saudi Arabia or the controversy with Saudi Arabia, but this article directly asks a lot of these questions. Interview, new Saudi gaming company is well-funded and controversial. And this is from almost exactly a year ago. Ahead of a new multi-billion gaming conglomerate backed by Saudi government sovereign wealth fund says it's a real business, not a reputation booster for the controversial kingdom. The Savvy Gaming Group boosted into public view in January with an announcement from the country's public investment fund that the new entity had purchased esports organizations for $1.5 billion. So this was a year ago. A few other details were shared at the time about Savvy's structure or agenda. Savvy arrives not just amid scrutiny of the country, but continued pushback over various organizations seeking to partner with Saudi Arabia. And then he says, I'm not over there on an image makeover project. Savvy CEO Brian Ward's the same guy, former top executive at EA and Activision, told Axios, and that's who is interviewing them. An in-person interview on Wednesday, waving off the idea that the project was the gaming equivalent of so-called sports washing. And I'm not familiar with that, but several people in my chat were talking about what's going on in the UK with the football leagues. I'm not familiar with that at all. We're there to build a real commercial entity that's a powerhouse, hopefully in gaming, and aimed at developing and growing the game sector. Saudi Arabia's domestic gaming market is growing fast and reached $1 billion in 2021. The Savvy project was developed over the last 2 years and incorporated this past November. Ward says keen interest from the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, I don't know how to say his name, who chairs the company board. Savvy is fully funded by Saudi PIF, so the sovereign wealth fund, the Saudi Arabian money, government money, basically. With the largest amount of capital in its 50-year history, Ward says. We won't say exactly how much money they have, but it's described as many, many, many billions. So apparently it's been revealed in future articles that the amount that they allocated towards this company, Savvy, was $38 billion. Nearly $5 billion of it went to purchase Scopely. The group's sprawling ambition, as described by Ward, span a range of gaming sectors, including building gaming venues, a studio to make games, incubator for developing gaming in Saudi Arabia, an esports company, and an investment fund. A significant part of our mandate, Ward says, is to develop gaming in Saudi Arabia, Middle East, and Africa, but the scope of it is more generally global. Well, they just want to diversify their holdings. The enterprise is inherently controversial, given its ties to Saudi Arabia and its close affiliation with the Crown Prince. Asked about the kingdom's record on human rights, its crackdown on women activists and homosexuality, as well as its ongoing war in Yemen, Warman cautioned not to rely on older impressions of Saudi Arabia. He argues that visiting the country would open people's eyes to progress. With talking points printed in front of him, he shared a statistical comparison about increase of women in the Saudi workforce and compared it favorably to the time it took America to reach similar mark throughout this 20th century. And then when asked by Axios, the interviewer, if he agreed with the U.S. intelligence assessment that the Crown Prince approved of the 2018 killing of Washington Post columnist, and I don't know how to say the name, Jamal, I'm sorry, my apologies. He said, I can't talk about that. I don't have any knowledge of it. I'm not part of the government. I'm not associated with the government. Savvy got a grilling from employees of the esport companies they recently acquired. So this article here is in response to another organization being bought by this group, the same way that Scopely is being bought by this group. And those employees of that other group, which was that esports league that I'm not familiar with, from employees of the esports company recently acquired, Ward says, during the town halls with workers, he noted, we got all kinds of questions like this about LGBTQ rights and the safety of women in the kingdom. His answers to all of this, that Savvy will operate with the values and culture that we know our audience wants and our audience respects, and what those of us have been in business 25 years like about our industry being forward-looking and liberal in many respects. Many companies have shunned the kingdom after the killing and have warned to do it again, perhaps emboldened by the U.S. government's refusal to sanction the Saudis. The PIF invests in numerous U.S. firms. The bottom line, Savvy has money to make big moves. Yeah, they bought Scopely, allowing Ward to describe ambitions that include building 300 gaming venues in Saudi Arabia in 5 years. Investments will continue. Savvy is already looking into developers, publishers, and tech companies for acquisitions. Ward describes as more big deals as likely. Will that actually happen? Savvy expected criticism and is getting it, is I have to answer, and so through our actions, Ward says, not, just talking points. So what does this mean to the community? Well, firstly, I do think this is a good take right here that maybe the reason why things have been kind of weird and bad lately is that they're trying to get the revenue numbers as high as possible to make this deal go forward. And the other thing, too, is that I think that at the top of Scopely, this is a huge payday, and there's probably going to be a turnover in the top leadership of Scopely. Now, I don't know if that has anything to do with Boundless or the Marvel Strike Force employees at all. But I do think that the industry right now, and I'm talking about the tech industry, is kind of a little bit in turmoil. There's a lot of tech layoffs and things like that. And I think some people may take issues with some of the things we talked about in this video, and some of the employees may quit. I also think that there are players in the game that will take issues with what we were talking about here today, and they will also quit the game. Probably a lot of people are on the fence anyways, right? Given the state of the game, and maybe this will be the last straw for them, and they'll move on. But overall, the way that I see this, and I don't really know what to make of this. I feel like this is like a hedge fund, like just an investment company that is purchasing assets to have diversification. Like it's like a 401k, type of deal. And they're just trying to diversify away from oil. And one of the things that they want to buy is video games. And I hope that this doesn't change anything. And typically, as long as Marvel Strike Force and Scopely remains profitable, probably they won't have that much involvement with the company, and things will go on as usual. Now, the game Marvel Strike Force has changed hands so many times. Like I heard that the game was for sale, and EA was looking into buying it, a couple months before the game went global. I mean, if we go all the way back to Kabam, Kabam was purchased by Netmarble, and then there were parts of it that they didn't want to buy. They wanted to buy Marvel Contest of Champions, but they didn't want to buy the other stuff. And so that other stuff was pushed off into another company called Aftershock. And then Aftershock was acquired by Fox, and it became Fox Next Studios. And then they collaborated with Seismic Niantic to actually build the game of Marvel Strike Force. And then Fox Studios got bought by Disney, and then Disney didn't want to own the game, but they just bought Fox, and they were just handed Marvel Strike Force, and they didn't want to own Marvel Strike Force, so they sold it to Scopely, and Scopely now has sold out to Saudi Arabia. So the people that work there have changed hands so many times. So I don't know that that's going to make much of a difference. Like, I feel like a lot of the employees have been bounced around. I don't know how many times it is, and I don't even know if I got the whole timeline right, but it's a lot of changes have been made. So what do you think? I feel like this is kind of where I'm at too. Is this purchase a big deal to you? Not really. And I think that's the way that most people look at it. Let me know what you think in the comment section. And as always, thanks for watching. Keep on gaming. Bye for now.